What a day of college football. Welcome into Four Verts. I'm Harrison Graham. 3 SEC games go to overtime. Oregon and Ohio State delivers the drama. Doesn't get much better than this. If you want more college football news, reaction, NFL coverage, and more, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and drop your comments on your thoughts on all of the action today. I don't even know where to start, so I guess we'll go to Eugene. Oregon surviving at home. What is Will Howard doing? So if anyone saw, first of all, great back and forth game. Ducks win 32-31. Awesome game. I'd like to see those teams play again. They probably will meet up in the Big Ten championship game. But with 5 seconds left, Ohio State's at like the Oregon 38, so they're probably just outside of field goal range. And so you're trying to run a quick hitter. They did have a timeout, so you can throw to the sidelines, over the middle, go straight down, call a timeout, whatever. Will Howard is just chilling back in the pocket. Then he decides to scramble forward, and he slides down for about a 6-yard pickup. Well, the clock runs out. Just no awareness whatsoever. This is a 4-year college player who has started well over 30 games in his college career, played a bunch at Kansas State, now he's at Ohio State. And by the time he slides, the clock runs out, and Ohio State isn't able to get a field goal attempt to have a chance to win. And the early reaction on social media is, how does Ryan Day have his guys not ready? Ryan Day blows it again. And look, I get it. Ryan Day's 1-6 against top 5 teams now. He's got a lot to answer for, and he's got to start winning these big games. Otherwise, they're going to run him out of town. But Will Howard has got to know better in that spot. I mean, what are you doing? If the quick completion is not there, you've got to throw it in the dirt and then give yourself another play. Whether it's a Hail Mary to the end zone, whether it's a 55, 56-yard field goal attempt, it doesn't matter. What you can't do is scramble forward and slide down when there's no time left. It's like when Nico for Tennessee ran out of bounds in the last play of the game against Arkansas last week. At least in his case, he's only started 5 games in college at the time. Will Howard's been in college for 4 years. I mean, that's unacceptable. And you can go with the take of Ryan Day can't let that happen. He's got to have his guys ready to go in that situation. Well, Will Howard had about a 5-yard out that was open to the right side of the field. He just didn't throw it. Like, Will Howard made the mistake. Period. End of story. That is inexcusable for an experienced quarterback. And quite frankly, just a disappointing game to an awesome ending. You would have loved to see if the kid could have made a 50-plus yard field goal, but instead you've got a 22-year-old veteran senior quarterback sliding down with no time left. I mean, just a really disappointing ending if you're an Ohio State fan, and a familiar one coming up short in these big games under Ryan Day. That is something that he's going to have to answer for, because they had opportunities in this game, but in that individual moment, I can't blame Ryan Day there. Like, Will Howard has to know better. He just asked. I mean, he knew it right away. As soon as he did it, he put his hands on his head. It's like, dude, it'd be one thing if you ran QB draw right up the gut, right off the snap, try to get 4 or 5 yards, take the timeout. He was back in the pocket for a good 1.5, 2 seconds before he took off. Like, it was just a horrible usage of time by the Ohio State quarterback, and they fall 1 point short in what feels like a familiar game for them. And they'll get other chances. They'll have other big games. They play Penn State in a few weeks. They win that, they'll be back in the Big Ten title game. But man, that's inexcusable. That's inexcusable to lose that game in that fashion at the end of it. Game that just went final. Reason we're just now filming, another overtime game. I mentioned there was 3 of them in the SEC, and LSU topping that 3 overtimes too. 3 total, 2 in the SEC. We'll get to USC Penn State in a minute. LSU topping Ole Miss 29-26. And my main takeaway from this game is I feel like Lane Kiffin always finds a way to lose these type of games. I know it's literally not true. He's won some big games and some close ones. He beat LSU in a shootout last year. So I know it's not true, but Ole Miss was in control of this game pretty much throughout the night. But they're not putting the game away, right? LSU's just hanging around at home. The crowd's hanging in it. Garrett Nussmeier is struggling most of the night, but what does he do? Drives him down late, gets into the end zone, forces overtime. Ole Miss goes backwards on their drive. Luckily, their kicker makes a 57-yard field goal, and LSU on the first play, Nussmeier throws a 25-yard touchdown to steal this one. Garrett Nussmeier in this game, the LSU quarterback, went 22 for 51 for 337, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks, and won the game. If you drop back 50-plus times and complete less than 50%, that you should lose that game 100 times out of 100. Jackson Dart, 24 42, 284, a touchdown and a pick. Ole Miss also rushed for 180 yards, whereas LSU rushed for 84, could not run the ball. Like, how do you lose that game if you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss? Like, where I'm not giving Ryan Day a pass, but I'm not blaming him for the end of that game for what happened with Will Howard. I got to put a lot of blame on Lane Kiffin tonight. To not find a way to put that game away and to win that game in regulation it's just inexcusable. It's unacceptable. Ole Miss is a better team than LSU, at least I feel like they are. And I get it. It's on the road. It's Death Valley. But Garrett Nussmeier, I'll say it again, 22 for 51, and you lose that game if you're Ole Miss? And now they've lost 2 out of 3, and they probably got to win out if they want to be a playoff team. 5-2 now. Huge win for Brian Kelly. He's lost a lot of these since getting the LSU job. That's a massive win for him as they improve to 5-1. They're firmly back in the playoff picture. So, it's kind of a funky game. It was 17-13 Ole Miss at halftime. And then with, a minute left, it's 23-16 Ole Miss. It was just kind of a defensive stall in the second half before Nussmeier drove him down late and then hits the quick hitter to Kyron Lacey to win the game in overtime. But just a bizarre game, a game where you just felt like if Ole Miss can make one play, they're going to go up 2 scores and win this game, but they just never did it. And that's one when you're on the flight home, if you're Lane, you're just like, how the F did we lose that game? I mean, it's not a choke because it was close throughout, but it's a lack of a killer instinct. It's an inability to finish. And that you're gonna have a tough time sleeping if you're Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart tonight, because that's just a game you shouldn't lose. Period. End of story. And I don't mean like going into it. I mean with the way it was playing out. It's like everyone watching, like LSU is hanging on by a thread, but you let a team hang around long enough that's got some talent and a quarterback that can get hot and in their building, it's going to come back to bite you. And it bit Ole Miss tonight, and that could be the difference in making or missing the college football playoff. It really could. So that's a brutal loss for Ole Miss. Huge win for LSU. Both teams have big games ahead. LSU definitely in the better position to make a push for the college football playoff with just one loss. Okay, before we get to Penn State-USC, let's talk Red River. Just an absolute bludgeoning. Texas wins 34-3. I like Texas all week. I thought they would at least pull away and win this game convincingly. I underestimated how gimmicky this Oklahoma offense is. I mean, it's embarrassing with Michael Hawkins Jr. Every play is roll out right, roll out left, throw it if it's there, run it if it's not, delayed counter right or left. I mean, they ran like 7 plays. I felt like I was watching a high school offense. Like, okay, we have a decent athlete at quarterback, but he doesn't survey the field that well. Let's just roll him out each side of the field and hope we bust a couple long plays. I mean, that was putrid. And I'm not really sure Seth Luttrell really has a choice. Their offensive coordinator. The O-line sucks. Their top 5 receivers suck. Are out. And the other guys aren't very good. Hawkins is clearly limited. You kind of wondered, would they go back to Jackson Arnold? But I've heard some rumors that he's trying to preserve his red shirt. He's only played in 4 games, so he's probably going to redshirt and transfer. But I couldn't believe they stuck with Hawkins the whole game. I mean, it was clear. Once Texas went up 14-3, because OU in the first quarter actually controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides. Quinn Ewers looked rusty. He was airmailing passes. He only played okay. And Oklahoma actually did a good job in the trenches on both sides, especially with their defensive line. But then Texas scores, gets up 7-3. And when they scored again 14-3, I texted my uncle, who's a big Texas fan, and my dad. I was like, this game's over. I mean, they can't score twice. they're not going to get to 14 points. It's a college football game. Maybe you get one, right? You house a punt, you get a pick six. Offense puts one drive together. But once it was 14-3, it was done. And then when they fumbled and Texas went up 21-3, it's like, all right, I guess I'm going to pay more attention to USC Penn State because this is curtains. And for Brent Venables, the Oklahoma head coach, and I think that's a common theme from this week, microscope under a lot of these coaches. Venables has done a nice job with OU's defense. I will give him that. He has. They tried today. But when your offense is going 3 and out every drive, you just got no shot. But the offense is just embarrassing. And yeah, I get the receiver situation. I get you're having to switch quarterbacks. But, like, you're not even a decent offense. This is Oklahoma. Like, you went from, say what you want about Lincoln Riley. You had a top 5 offense every year with Lincoln. You've got a bottom 15 Power 4 offense, if not bottom 5 or 10. I mean, it is a joke. Go rewatch the game. The quarterback's rolling out right, rolling out left. It's just, it was tough to watch. I felt like it was varsity and JV. I mean, it was 34-3. That game could have been 51-3. It was that much of a bludgeoning for Texas. So, yeah, the big takeaway from the weekend, Texas looks like the number 1 team in the country. They really do. They host Georgia next week, who only beat Mississippi State by 10 points. I like Texas big in that game. Or I say big. I like them to cover whatever the point spread's going to be. I would imagine they're a 3 to 5 point favorite, 3 to 6 points. I will take Texas to win and cover. They're just the most complete team. Sark's got them playing defense at a high level for the first time since he's been there. Quinn Ewers, who didn't play great today, he started to figure things out later on in that game. They got skill everywhere. Isaiah Bond did leave with an injury, so keep an eye on that. But they're just loaded, and Oklahoma isn't. I mean, it's pretty simple. You look back, Venables loses 49-0 in his first year to Texas. Somehow wins last year with Dillon Gabriel, who they run out of town and is going 6-0 with Oregon. And look, I get it. You're playing the recruiting balance game. Jackson Arnold was a 5-star, but I bet OU would like to have Dillon Gabriel right now. And I don't think Gabriel would have gone to the portal if OU still wanted him. This portal thing, you're kind of playing with fire, not only for the players, but for these schools too. Because everybody whines and bitches, all these boomers, all these kids are quitting, they're going to the portal, blah, blah, blah. You have to understand, some of these schools push players to the portal. Deion did it at Colorado. Hey, we don't want you. Go to the portal. Like, it happens everywhere. So I'm not saying it's a perfect system. I'm not saying I'm pro-player on every situation here. But coaches are telling players to go into the portal. You are not going to play for us. It's pretty clear that happened with Dillon Gabriel. Hey, we're going to roll with Jackson Arnold. And they got to bench him 3 weeks in. And it turns out the other guy isn't any better. So just not good offensively for Oklahoma. They were a fraudulent 4-1, 5-1 team, whatever, coming in. Everyone kind of knew that. And that got exposed in front of everybody today. Okay, I want to talk a little Penn State-USC, then we'll get out of here. We'll kind of quick hit some other games. But I really liked USC today. Cross-country flight for Penn State, which in all this conference realignment, you're seeing more and more of coast-to-coast flights. That's a tough deal. I mean, a lot of these kids are 18, 19, 20 years old. They've never even been on planes before the last couple of years, probably a lot of them. And they certainly don't fly for 6.5 hours across the country while during the week they're practicing, going to class. Like, it's a big deal. Penn State, it's 2,500 miles or whatever. And early on, it looked that way. They looked lethargic. USC was rolling. Miller Moss was cooking. They had a couple of big plays. It was 20-6 at halftime. And then they're just kind of farting around in the third quarter. Here comes Penn State. 2 quick touchdowns to tie it. USC takes a 30-23 lead with about 5 minutes left. Can't stop them. And they lose in overtime. And you're just like, or 27-20. Then they kick the field goal in overtime. Or is that what happened? No, they missed the field goal in overtime. And then Penn State kicked one to win it. So it was 23-all. USC scores. Penn State scores to force overtime at 30 apiece. USC misses their kick. Penn State makes theirs. And it's just like, is Lincoln Riley on the hot seat? I think he's 5-8 in his last 13. I mean, after the game, he just puts his hands on his knees and just looks at the ground like, how did I lose this game? And I know that's been kind of a theme of the show. Like, how did Ole Miss lose? How did USC lose? How did Ohio State, Will Howard do that at the end of the game? And, I'm not trying to take anything away from the winning teams because they all made plays when they had to. But Lincoln Riley, like, you got to start winning these games, dude. And, like, I'm not even saying USC's a better team than Penn State, but, like, you're up 20-6. You're at home. You've got these guys on the ropes. You're coming off a loss to Minnesota. This is a good way to kind of turn things back around, get your season back on track, and you blow it again. I don't know, man. I just don't know if Lincoln's a good fit in LA. He just may not be. And I don't know where this thing goes from here. They're clearly not a playoff team at 3-3 now. Even if they went out, it would take a miracle to get in. They feel like a 6-6, 7-5 team. And crazy thing is, they lost by 3 or 4 to Michigan, lost this game in overtime, lose in the final minute to Minnesota. I mean, they're 3 or 4 plays away from being 6-0, but those are the margins. You're in the Big Ten. These games are going to be close. You got to find a way, and he's just not. They did it against LSU in week 1, but since then, when these games were tight, they're on the wrong side of them more often than not, and I don't know, man. I think he could be in trouble, and he could be in trouble fast. Some quick hitters here. I mentioned Georgia giving up 31 points to Mississippi State at home. That's not very promising. I'm not sure what's going on there. We'll see if they come ready to play against Texas. Alabama almost loses again. I mean, South Carolina, for a good chunk of that game, outplayed them. They get the onside kick late, but Sellers throws the pick on just a YOLO deep pass. He didn't need to do that, but Bama survives 27-25. Easily could have lost that game at home to South Carolina. Since that first half against Georgia, they felt pretty fraudulent. Vandy last week, South Carolina this week. By the way, shout out Vandy. Easy to have a letdown game after that Bama win. On the road at Kentucky, who's looked pretty good at times this year. Beat them by a touchdown. Pretty impressive. Tennessee, Florida, the other overtime game in the SEC. Tennessee, 23-17. Florida was up 10-0 in full control, and Graham Mertz got hurt. And it just changed the game like that. I actually threw a few bucks on Florida money line because they've been playing better recently. Mertz has actually been pretty good. And Tennessee just looked awful last week. And that injury just changed the game. Because DJ Lagway, the freshman 5-star, who has flash potential, threw a nice touchdown to force overtime late. But Tennessee, from there, you just felt like, okay, if our defense can keep playing, if we just put a couple drives together, they go up 17-10. Lagway hits the touchdown with 25 seconds left, and I'm screaming at the TV, Billy, go for 2. You're on a backup freshman quarterback on the road in a raucous environment. 1 play for 3 yards or overtime? I'll take the 1 play for 3 yards. And he lined up to go for 2, and he did this weird-ass formation. Tennessee takes a timeout, and then they come out and kick the extra point. It's like they only had 1 play ready to go that they liked, which I get it. If you love 1 play and then don't, okay, go to overtime. But to me, just feel out the situation. You're the underdog on the road. You have a dual threat quarterback. You can get him on the move who can run it in. But you get that game to overtime. I'm leaning with the home team, the home crowd, the better team 99 times out of 100. And that's what happened. It was pretty obvious what was going to happen when that game got to overtime. And Tennessee or Florida missed the field goal, and Tennessee scored a touchdown. So, just I question. I think sometimes we overdo the go for two thing, but sometimes you have to feel out the situation. Other than that 1 touchdown pass Lagway threw in that spot, the offense had been sputtering without Mertz. Take your chances for 1 play and 3 yards. Like that, I like my odds better there than going to overtime. I really do. So I disagreed with that decision. Clemson rolled Wake Forest 49-14. They've won 5 in a row. Notre Dame 49-7 over Stanford. Iowa State quietly 6-0, 28-16 win at West Virginia. BYU 6-0 as well. Pair of Big 12 teams. They hammer Arizona 41-19. Crazy day, man. Crazy day. And it's not over. Colorado, K-State right now. Kansas State's up 20-7. Looks like they just scored. Extra point pending. Travis Hunter left that game with the shoulder injury. We'll see if he returns. But, yeah, without him, it's going to be tough. Going to be tough. I like K-State in that spot because they're a more physical team than Colorado. So we'll see how that one ends up playing out. All right, long show tonight. A lot of college football. Big NFL day tomorrow. So be sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We'll have more NFL coverage for you guys then. My name is Harrison Graham. Enjoy your night or morning if you're watching on Sunday. See you guys soon.